This is Gateway City Sports. This is the Derek King Sports Show. Cardinals, Blues, Mizzou Athletics, Chiefs. He has it covered. The Derek King Sports Show. Only on Gateway City Sports.
Hello, everybody. Good morning. A beautiful 75-degree sunny Wednesday. Man, the year's going by rather quickly, and we're going to get into quite a few topics of discussion, as you guys had seen in the scroll. We're going to talk a little bit about Tom Franklin, his correspondence with a certain particular NFL team, what kind of correlated from that. We're going to talk a little bit about the St. Louis NFL lawsuit and what continues to happen there. We're going to talk about the entire mischief that happened last night with the Cardinals against the Cubs. And we're also going to talk just a teensy-weensy little bit about the new NHL expansion team, the Seattle Kraken, that will be having their expansion draft very shortly. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to get kind of all the housekeeping things out of the way. If you guys and gals out there have not been made aware, obviously this show, part of Gateway City Sports, the GCS Media Group LLC, we have lots of different shows and entities and things that I want to touch on. Obviously, this show being one of them, you're watching, you're sharing, and I appreciate that greatly. One other thing that I'd like you to do is, if you're a Cardinals fan, we've got a couple of shows that I would love for you to go and check out. And in no particular order, but let's start with Yacker Jacks. This is one of our newer shows that have just come out. It's hosted by Brian Swope. And he's got a fun show over there. He's had a lot of really good stuff, and one of my personal favorites here as of late was the episode titled "The Cheating Partner," and where he had Mr. Saxon, Mark Saxon, on, and they discussed a multitude of different things on that particular episode. So go check that out. It's over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. It's on all the platforms. The next show that I want to tell you guys about is another Cardinals podcast, 2 for 3. That's hosted by our very own Mike Stevenson. Fantastic show. Go check it out. Great for Cardinals fans. Also, we have Turn Into 2 podcast, and that's with Matt Knowles and Tito over there, and they do a great show every single usually week, every other week, but they always have a great show over there. But a couple other offshoots that I do want to tell you about is our relationship with the XFL STL talk show. They are a One Universal and In the Zone network, and as everyone knows that I've been affiliated with In the Zone network for quite some time, but they have this fantastic XFL-oriented talk show that they do every single Wednesday, typically around 7 p.m. most occasions. Go over on Facebook, make sure you give them an ad. Also want to pump the brakes on the In the Cards show that is hosted by Arlington Lane, and that's another great show. And so, we've got lots of stuff. There's more coming, but I just wanted to kind of get that housekeeping stuff up and out of the way, because I have a really bad habit, because I get so excited that I want to tell you guys about the latest news and what's happening and what's going on, that I just forget about it. It slips my mind. So my apologies that I haven't gotten around to that stuff, but make sure you go and you check it out. You can add us on Captivate, Apple Podcasts, Gateway City Sports, add all those individual shows on there too as well. That being said, we are done doing all the housekeeping stuff. Let's get into the actual conversation of what's kind of been going on. So here a few days ago, there was correspondence between one Mr. Tom Franklin and the Arizona Cardinals. And I want to stress that it was brought to my attention due to the fact of the overwhelming evidence that's come out in the St. Louis NFL lawsuit, where the Arizona Cardinals were one of two teams that voted against the Rams leaving the St. Louis market. We've learned information even in the past. I've reported on it for quite some time of Mr. Bidwell, Michael Bidwell, had stood up for the city, had stood up for the fans, and had made it very clear that you cannot do this to this fan base again. Obviously, we know how vile Jerry Jones is. We know how vile Stan Kroenke is. We know all of these things. And now knowing what we know and what has been brought to our attention, it is critically important that those fans that want to get back into the NFL, and a lot of fans that are younger than I am, I'm rubbing up on 40. So for me, I remember the very back end of the Big Red. I remember I grew up, in those last few years as a kid, watching them on TV and things like that, being with my father and so on and so forth and watching it. And I remember the time period when we didn't have a team. I remember the Stallions expansion process. You guys have read all of those things that we've talked through on that particular subject matter. I remember when the Rams came here in 95 and everything that was kind of wrapped up and revolved around that entire venture that involved, at the time, St. Louis Mayor Freeman Bosley Jr. and County Executive Buzz Westfall. There's a lot of things that I have touched on in prior articles: the good, bad, and the ugly, NFL cartel, dirty deeds done dirt cheap over there on Gateway City Sports. Make sure you go over and check them out. But the big thing that I want to touch on is what happened between Tom and the Cardinals. Now, Tom, he was looking to get back into the fandom, right? I think there's a lot of fans that are still sour at the NFL, and I completely understand. Trust me, whenever I tell you this, if you do not want to get back on the NFL, fandom bandwagon, I 100% understand. Nobody is going to discredit you for that or poke at you and say, hey, you should get back. No, I completely understand, and I get it if you don't want to. But if you do, I kind of gave up the ghost last year. I gave it up, and I just said, hey, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead, and I'm going to go back to doing what it is that I typically do. And so I started watching. I have NFL Sunday Ticket, and I get all of the games. All of the games. So I can watch the best games or the games that I want to watch in any market, which is always fantastic unless they're blacked out for some reason. But Tom had addressed it by saying, hey, you know what? I'm going to put something out there, and I'm going to see, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. So he took a risk, and he put a tweet out, and he tagged the Arizona Cardinals. And I thought, well, hey, that's kind of cool. We'll see what happens. He put a poll out. Said that he would like to, see who he should root for. One of the teams was the Chiefs. Now, obviously, knowing what we know now about Clark Hunt and his never-ending quest for market superiority. Now, mind you, he wasn't the first team to jump on St. Louis's dead body after the Rams had pounced on it and wiped their feet on it on the way out the door on their way back to L.A. But the Indianapolis Colts were the very first team, just FYI. There was just a few hours after the Rams relocation was approved, their social media team thought it would be a good idea to say, hey, St. Louis, we're just a few hours on down the road. Come on down here to Lucas Oil Stadium and be a fan of our team. That was rough. So Tom put up this tweet, and I'm going to show this here on the show because I think that it's critically important that you see it. This is Tom's Twitter account. So I want to bring this up here real quick and show you guys. This was the tweet. And I hope you guys can see it. If you can't, I'll read it off to you. It says, one aspect of the NFL versus STL lawsuit that came out this week is confirmation Clark Hunt was key in getting the Rams out of St. Louis. And the Arizona Cardinals were the mystery team that voted against Kroenke's plan. I adopted the Chiefs as my team, but now I'm skeptical. What do I do? He obviously put this poll, and the large majority. I'm sorry, folks. Ooh, I get tickled by this. It's funny to me. It's funny. 87.4%. It's a landslide. This is like, the presidential election in what was it, 88? Whatever it was. I mean, Jiminy Christmas, or not even 88. What was it? Reagan's one year that he beat. Who was it? I can't remember who it was. It was Bush that ran against Dukakis, and I can't remember who Reagan had ran against in his second term, where he had just trounced him. I don't know. I'm not that big into politics, anyways. But the point being is, it's absolutely just got trounced. And so, obviously Tom had tagged the Arizona Cardinals in it. What was interesting is not only did that happen, but as you could see, the Arizona Cardinals actually responded and replied, hey, come on over. Come on over to our team. Come on over and be a part of us. So, I just thought, hey, that's pretty cool. The Arizona Cardinals are involved. And, we had a few people in there that were, pointing out their opinions of what they thought and who they thought that he should rep. Obviously, we'll kind of go through the responses, because there were many, many responses, to this. This is over on Tom's page, and you can follow him at Tom Franklin STL. Over there on Twitter. Make sure you go over and give him a follow. He's a great follow. But obviously, the update with all of that, the Cardinals saying they'll see what they could do and all of that great stuff. Now, I don't want to ruin the surprise. You're going to have to go over and check it out. But Tom did do a YouTube video, and it is over on his YouTube page. And here it is right here. Make sure that you go over and check it out. It's a good, fun video. But he not only addresses the entire situation, but he also shows you some of the presence, some of the swag that the Arizona Cardinals actually sent him. This, I think, for me, and this is just me personally speaking, okay? So I don't want to speak out of turn when it comes to addressing this. I'm going to scroll down through here. I'm sorry for making you dizzy, but this was the big thing for me. This was the tweet right here. I mean, I don't think there's a lot of folks that really understand how the NFL operates and what it is that they do, how most teams operate. This is a handwritten note from the FO of the Cardinals. Handwritten and mailed to him in the package with his swag. That's huge. That's such a huge deal. And especially for me. I come from a customer service background, right? Pardon me, my hat's all twisted on sideways. And by the way, Tom, he's in the chat. Tom, man, yeah, I've got several of them, brother. So, let's go ahead. Let's do a little story time. You got your swag. I got my swag. You like my whiteout, chromium, whatever you want to call it. Here's my blackout, if you could see it. That's pretty sharp. Don't want to wear that in the summertime. That sucks. And then, obviously, my traditional right here. Nice hats. I have a series of them. And obviously, back behind me, you guys can see, Neil Lomax. You guys could see Kurt Warner. You guys could see Johnny Rowland. Mel Gray's back there, back behind Neil Lomax. So I am a Cardinal fan. I support the team. But for this right here, what we're talking about, this handwritten note right here is so special. and so important that I don't think that there's a whole lot of people that can understand what it is of why I am so passionate about this particular subject matter. The note reads, Tom, we hope this package helps seal your adoption of the Arizona Cardinals as your NFL team. Enjoy the new gear. Cardinals. That's huge. Coming from a customer service background where I spent 15 plus years in the business working in customer service, I could tell you directly that that is a very important thing. That's huge. That's great. That's fantastic. Now, like I said before, I don't believe that this is just... I knew the situation with Bill Bidwell when he was in St. Louis. When he left, why he left. Tom touches a little bit of that in his video. I've touched in that in prior interviews, prior videos. We touched about a little bit on the subject matter with my interview with Howard Balzer last week. That's up over on GatewayCitySports.com. It's up over on the Facebook page. It's all over. It's gotten nearly 6,000 views. It's been fantastic. It's been really getting some traction. This is Michael. And people need to understand something about Michael Bidwell. Michael Bidwell was born in St. Louis. He went to school in St. Louis. He did some of his college in St. Louis at St. Louis University. How important that is for the fans of the St. Louis market to be able to have someone who understands them. And not only that, I think I need to stress how much that Michael continues to do for the market in St. Louis. I want to make it clear, this is not a fluff piece. Because this is what it's all about. This is not the new age, cardinal bird like what you see up here. This is old school. This is the real stuff right here. Full helmet. And I've had that for a while. It's got a lot of great fantastic former Big Red stars autographs on there. I'm looking to obviously land some more. That's really what I want to do. But being in the fact of COVID and everything else, it kind of slowed that process down. But I wanted to share that with you guys. There's a lot of interesting stuff that we've got going on over at GCS that is going to revolve around this particular subject matter. Something we're pretty excited about. Something we're working on. It's pretty big. So I'll tease it. I'll leave it at that. That's one of the big, huge things. So the next thing that I want to touch on is the St. Louis NFL lawsuit and kind of what's happening there, what's going on, what's continuing to happen. I want to update you guys on the filings and everything that goes on because, we're all busy, right? We have busy lives. We have busy things that are going on. And speaking of being busy, just because we have busy lives doesn't mean that you should not take time to make sure that you get proper insurance coverage on your assets because you're busy. Make sure you contact one of our main sponsors, Sean Wiley at the Wiley Group. He'll make sure that he gets you all set up on everything that you need. It doesn't matter what it is. If you just want to even talk sports with him, if you want to talk Cardinals football, if you want to talk Cardinals baseball, hockey, he doesn't care. Just give him a call. Shoot him an email. Shoot him a text. It doesn't matter. Sean is great. He will make sure that he takes care of you. That's Sean Wiley over at the Wiley Group. Remember that you're in good hands with Allstate. So let's get going on this court case, and let's start talking about what's being filed right now, what we're talking about that is going on at this point in time in the docket entries. And let's kind of discuss and go over what those things mean. So the last filing was on the 12th. And I believe the last time we had updated was prior to that. They have, the defendants, the NFL, have started to file protective orders against the plaintiffs, the city of St. Louis, so that a way they can kind of slow up the process, because they have that 10-day window to be able to get the assets of these particular owners in question and to kind of file everything. So they have a very small window to be able to do all of that. They're still working on that stuff. But it is something that continues to get worked on. It's going to continue to keep moving on. I want to stress to all the fans that are out there that are listening. My inbox has been absolutely blown up by all you great fans out there and everybody that wants to know what's going on and what's happening and how it correlates to what is going to happen. I don't like to get too deep into potential possibilities, because that's hearsay and it's all opinion based. What I do like to do is I like to have suggestions. I like to have conversation about, well, this could happen. That's a little bit different. Instead of saying, well, hey, this is what's going to happen. I've doubled down on and tripled down on a lot of predictions, and I have been thankfully correct in all of my assessments. This is one of those things to where I'm a little bit skeptical on making an absolution to say this is what's going to happen. I can tell you that I will double and triple down and quadruple down on my assessment that I really firmly believe that St. Louis wants a football team out of this. I cannot see how you would fight for the amount of years that they have fought for in court to do all of these things, to just say, hey, we're not going to do it. Also, I do want to stress that Dave Peacock did have a deposition. Just want to stress that. Dave Peacock did have a deposition. So all the things that he knew behind the scenes, that's going to be known in the depots. So just FYI. But getting back to what we were discussing and making an opinion based off of what's going to happen out of this, I just don't see the money situation. I don't see the money scenario. I don't believe it. I'm listen here. Let me full stop for a second. There are podcasts, radio casts that are in the St. Louis market right now whom I listen to, and I respect the creators of those and the people that are on those things. But they are horribly misinformed as to, number one, what the fans want, what the people want, and what the reality of the situation is. That's the two main things that I feel that they are horribly wrong on. Not just like a little bit off, but terribly wrong on. I'm not going to name names. I'm not going to point people out. If you fans out there that are listening to this show, if you're listening on iTunes or you're listening on, whatever platform you're listening to this on, and you're saying, well, who could that be? You know who it is. And there's several people. But couple of the things that continue to get spread that I am frustrated with, that I don't believe that are a correct assessment of the situation, is this narrative that keeps getting pushed around about $200, $300 million for a settlement. That's complete bull, as the great Palmer Alexander, the living legend himself, would say. That's bull. It's non-existent. It's not real. So that's the first one that I want to address. The second one that I want to address is that the St. Louis Law team doesn't want a team as recompense, as a reward. If you look at the numbers, and we know the history of the NFL does not like to pay, ever. If you take a settlement, and that would be the NFL coming to you as a fan and saying, hey, we're going to do an IE Cleveland type of deal to where In 3 years, if you guys don't have a team that relocates, you're going to be put at the top of the pile. If you don't have a team that relocates like the Bills or whatever, I would hate to even have to do that because it's just not something that I even want to do. I think there's a lot of fans out there that feel the same way. I would even go as far as telling city leaders to do the same thing of what Cleveland did, which is basically more or less kind of poison the well a little bit to avoid teams from moving there, to keep teams from saying, hey, we want to come to St. Louis. Set yourself up for the expansion team, period. End of discussion. That's what you do. Now, say, for example, right now it is the 21st of July, 2021. If that is the case, and let's say by the end of this year, St. Louis does have some form of a settlement that is procured and agreed upon between the NFL and St. Louis, that St. Louis manages to get an expansion team. It's still going to be 3 years before that team ever sees the field. 2 years to be very, very generous, but really it's going to be 3. It's going to be 3 years before you ever see a team take the field, an NFL team take the field in St. Louis, because you have to build a brand new facility. Everybody says, oh, well, you can put them in the dome. You can do this. You can do that. Yeah, you could. You could. I mean, that's where the 2 years kind of comes into that. But you still have to get an ownership group together. You still have to hire coaches. You still have to go through that entire process of branding and everything else that goes on with it. It is such a process that most people can't. They think it's just like flipping a light switch and there it is, you got a team. No, it takes a lot of time. So, in the meantime, I am making the humble suggestion that if you want to get back into football, you're a St. Louis fan, you definitely don't want to root for the Chiefs. I get it. I understand. I've always had kind of a soft spot for the team in my heart, but being obviously since the information that we've had that has come out, I'm a little less inclined to root for them. So I would go with the Cardinals. That's my pick. They're an exciting team. They've got a really exciting roster this year. If you follow Howard Balzer over on social media in any way, shape, or form, he's constantly writing and talking about all of this stuff. So that would be my suggestion. We're still going to have 3 years, bare minimum, before we ever have a team in St. Louis. Whether that be if it's a relocation, it could happen soon. But who really wants that? Do we want another Rams 2.0? Do we want another Stan Kroenke? Do we want another Georgia Frontier? Do we want any of that? Do we really want that mess? No, we really don't. Stan Kroenke's been steeped in St. Louis football ever since the early 90s. Whenever he tried to get in on the St. Louis, he tried to muscle in on the Stallions. And they finally gave up and just said, okay, fine. Jerry Clinton stepped aside and let Stan Kroenke come in, and that was that. And then James Bush Orthwine bought the New England Patriots in, 92, 93, then tried to move the team to St. Louis. Might even have been closer to 94. Then tried to move the team to St. Louis. Robert Kraft, who held the lease on then Foxborough Stadium at the time, blocked him and said, no, you're not moving. At that point, that's where JBO put the team up for sale and said, if I can't move them, I don't want them. So he started taking bids. This is the shocking thing that I think that a lot of people need to remember or understand. Stan Kroenke put in an offer to buy the Patriots, and he was going to move them back to St. Louis and call them the Stallions. He was going to move them to St. Louis and call them the Stallions. That's what was going to happen. But because JBO, James Bush Orthwine, couldn't stand Kroenke and what he did to his good buddy Jerry Clinton and everything else in between, even though Stan Kroenke's bid was the highest bid at over $200 million, JBO said, yeah, no thanks. I'm good. And he sold it to Robert Kraft for less just to make sure that Kroenke didn't become an owner in the league. But remember, Stan Kroenke, everybody talks about Stan Kroenke. He's a Missouri guy. He's a Columbia, Missouri guy, blah, 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 blah. He's lived in Malibu for 25 plus years or more. He has nothing to do with Missouri. He has nothing to do with St. Louis. People forget these things, and that's okay. because memory is short term for a most extent when it comes to these things, and that's all right. I get it. I understand. So we're going to move on. We're going to get off that topic of discussion. We're going to move on to the next topic, and that really has to do with the St. Louis Cardinals and their bungling of the absolute debacle of what happened last night. It is absolutely ludicrous that they had a 6-1 lead, if I'm not mistaken, at one point in time, to give up 6 runs to lose 6-7 at the end of the game. This is it. It was funny having a conversation with one of my good friends, a private conversation, and his comment to me was, "And let the turd polishing begin after the game of why it is. Well, we tried our hardest, we tried our darndest, and by golly gosh, gee whiz, we just came up short." That missed ball by Molina is, and his lack of hustle that I saw was upsetting. And I'm not going to beat up on Molina because he's probably already beat up. He's tired. The game was late. It was going on. I get it. But this is why changes need to be made now. I mean, if you want to go ahead and ride this team out, by all means, go ahead and ride this team out. But I'm telling you right here, right now, there's a whole hell of a lot of fans that are pretty pissed off of the way this team has been handled, by the way this team has been ran. We all know that this is not just a coaching problem. We saw it with Matheny. Now we're seeing it with Schilt. We're going to see it with anybody else that comes along, because this is not a problem with the coach. This is a problem with the team president, with the team president / GM in John Mozeliak. John Mozeliak had installed Mike Matheny as head coach and had installed Mike Schilt. They're company guys that toe the line. I get it. Okay, they are going to the marching beat of the drum of whatever it is that John Mozeliak has set into place. Look at the movie Moneyball, one of my favorite baseball movies of all time. And Brad Pitt's character of Billy Beane, who's constantly fighting with manager Art Howe on how to manage a team. Because Art is managing the team the way he sees fit, because he's an old school manager, good manager, by the way, that's managing the team. And then you have the GM that's trying to come in and manage the team. Well, you never saw a GM that was a player. That BS. Your job as GM is to get players and let the manager manage the team. That's not the way it's working here. I've watched this for too many years. I've seen it go on for too long. As the incident that happened between at the time Mets manager skipper Terry Collins and the officiating crew, when Noah Syndergaard had thrown at a player or had hit a player during a game. I can't remember exactly what the specifics were. And he came out and he threw the biggest hissy fit that you could see. And the chief of the umpiring crew that night came out and said, "Listen, Terry, you got to calm down. Our ass is in the jackpot now." And that's literally what this is. John Mozeliak's ass is in the jackpot now, because this is his guys, his people, his chosen one, his picks. If this does not pan out, this is going to end up coming back to bite him in the tuchus. And that's a fact. This is upsetting. It's disturbing to see this kind of type of play. You're not going to get to playoffs with this. You think you're going to catch the Brewers? You think you're going to get a wild card with this kind of base? This is disgusting. This is, it's awful. To sit and watch that, you play this great game all the way up to the end of the game, and you roll over and give up the ghost. It's absolutely upsetting. It's disturbing. It needs to be addressed, and hopefully they do. Hopefully they do. But with Johan Oviedo coming in and pitching the kind of game that he pitched, and he was in line for the win, for him to lose that on the series of just bungled plays that allowed that to happen at the end of the game is upsetting and disturbing, and it needs to be addressed. Whether someone needs to be sent down, somebody needs to be fired, I don't know, and I don't care. But something definitely needs to be done. So let's talk a little bit about the Seattle Kraken and the NHL expansion draft that is coming up. It's breaking news while we have been doing this show that the Seattle Kraken have agreed to a 4-year, $16 million deal with defenseman Adam Larson from the Oilers. It's interesting. It's also looking, and this is from rumors that I have heard, from other things that I have seen, that the Kraken are working deals right now to be able to select Blues player Vladimir Tarasenko and to be able to turn around and trade him for other picks and things of that nature. And even the potential possibility of the Kraken absorbing some of his payroll. So we'll see how that whole situation plays out. The Blues also, I believe, left unprotected was, why am I just drawing a blank here? Oh, man, that's going to make me upset. So now I have to actually look that up and find out who it is that the Blues left unprotected. And if it was Vince Dunn, or I believe it was Jaden Schwartz, if I'm not mistaken. I believe it was him. There might be some more players. I haven't caught up on that lately. I've been too wrapped up in some of these other things, but I've been trying to follow the Kraken situation and what's been going on with that and who they've been after and what they've been doing. They also are closing in on a contract with Jamie Oleksiak. I hope I'm saying that correctly. If I'm butchering it, my apologies. But there are several other players that they're looking at, several other players that they're trying to sign and or pick up. So it's going to be interesting to see how that whole situation goes down, who they're going to end up drafting in this expansion draft. It's going to be that. Schwartz is UFA. Okay, so it was Vince Dunn. Will has corrected me. Thank you, Will, on that. It's a little hard sometimes when you're producing your own show and you're doing everything by yourself to actually have to get in and find all of this information. That's why I have almost a second producer in Will that sits behind this on another screen in a different part of the state that's, hey, by the way, this and that. So I appreciate Will in helping me out on that. So that's pretty much it. We've covered 41 minutes so far, and, that's pretty much it for the week. We're going to continue to keep watching everything revolved around the NFL lawsuit. Like I said, teased it earlier, stay tuned to Gateway City Sports because there's going to be a lot of interesting things that are going to be happening here really soon. So there's your tease. So that does it for me, Derek King Sports Show signing off. I'll see you next week, Wednesday at 9 a.m. Like always, make sure that you tune into the XFL STL show tonight at usually 7 p.m. If the dirty one himself manages to rally himself and get himself put together, then they can manage to have that. So just make sure you go over to the Facebook page and you sign up over there and join because that's how you're going to get updated on everything. So that does it for me. I'll see you guys next week. Take care.